Hey, we haven't done a tour over here on the south end of the property for a while, so I thought that's what we should do right now. So our property is very long north-south and skinny east-west. To the west we have a farm field, and to the east we have the road. And as you all know, we're very close to the road. South of us we have a neighbor, and north of us we have a neighbor, and east. And the south end of the property, which is what we're looking at, is south of our buildings and right next to our neighbor's woods. And that woods is contiguous with some other neighbors' woods, so obviously the woods as a whole, and it used to be a lot bigger, but it's still a pretty good chunk. And so we're adding a small chunk back in over here. And it's been very interesting noticing the difference, say, on this end of the property, which most likely hasn't been farmed and has the higher humidity from the trees being denser than the humidity and the dryness that we have out on the west fence row, which is right next to the farm field. That we walked in the other day, and oh my gosh, it's so dry in there because there's just no organic matter. Even though we keep letting the leaves drop and throwing things in there, it just takes a really long time to build that up. And so the plants are pretty shriveled up since we're in September, and it's been a while since we've had a good rain. So this end of the property is always feeling pretty lush and exciting at this time of year to go see, when the other parts are feeling a little sad and dry. So there's the mother walnut that talk about a lot, and then there is a honey locust to the left right there, and an ironwood, so Woodland triacanthos, and then Australia virginiana for the ironwood. And I planted that ironwood as a little bare root, and obviously I didn't know the honey locust was right there because it's right next to it, so they grow fast. And you can see a mama honey locust up there, and a lot of animals love to eat those seed pods, so that's pretty neat to have. Alright, so let's just kind of take a look here. We put in a few persimmons, of course, which we're getting close to persimmon season, yes! And there's a persimmon right there, and it is our biggest one. And we know it's because, check this out. Yes, the downspout funnels right back there, giving that a nice big drink, and it is several feet taller than the others that don't get that extra water. Okay. Here we go. This is just a short little trail over here, and we'll get out of the glary sun here in a moment, though I have to say I love the sun. Always. Okay, so this is our little woodland path, and we're just going to go in there. You can see how much moisture is over here because we still have jewelweed flowering and doing all right. This is the Silky Dogwoods we've done videos on before. This one doesn't have any fruit. It's actually, what was here is already gone, and this one didn't put on a ton this year for whatever reason. Now we planted this sweet gum. Look at this girth already. We bought that as a potted plant, probably a couple years old, and they just grow fast, which is really encouraging. Look at those neat leaves, and they turn all those rainbow colors. We've put a lot of really nice trees right in here, and then a ton are growing on their own, so it's dense. Here's another Australia ironwood. And we're going to pass this basswood and this swamp white oak. This magnificent swamp white oak. These were all potted trees that we planted, except for the Australia, which was bare root. And then all these walnuts have come in on their own. The squirrels planted them, and so they're just doing great. Just great. This is going to be really, really shady eventually. So we'll keep some openings on other parts of the property for sure, because that mix, that edge mix, is also a really good life zone for many insects and birds. But then thick forest is good too, isn't it? There, swamp white oak. Okay, and this basswood. Look at these dinner plate leaves. I mean, they're that big. And the walnuts. And when I talk about organic matter, it's everything. So if we have boards that aren't treated and that are rotting, we just leave them in piles. We have burnt a lot of stuff in the past when we first moved in here because there was just so much, but we don't do that anymore. And these become really great homes for all kinds of insects that nest in wood, and salamanders underneath, and snakes and rodents, and eventually they will turn back into soil and add to that layer that's so necessary for the health of so many plants. A lot of the asters in here are just starting to come on. Just starting. So I laid these boards down a long time ago because it gets real wet here in the spring, and now we're just going to kind of let them melt. They'll be all done at some point. Look how they're getting enmeshed in the grass. Am I hearing a red-headed woodpecker? There are red-headed woodpeckers around here sometimes. They're not as common as the red-bellieds, but they're always exciting to see, and they are here. So check out this jewelweed here. It's very happy. The red buds, cut plants. It's quite a mix. You can see this is definitely in a transition mode, which is succession. That's what this all is. Everything shifts over time. Look how lush, though. You can see the moss in the path, and then the bioperturbation because of the looser soils. That is a very important piece of soil health. So don't be upset by little tunneling mammals. The only thing about these boards here is I got to be real careful where I step because so many little millipedes and slugs live on them. Okay, so there has been this super neat spider web here for days, and it's very active, and I don't want to break it, so we're crawling. You ready? Here we go. Okay, we didn't break it. It's good exercise for the legs. Goldenrod's in here. The walnuts, they are so good at making more oaks. One looks like, what, a pin oak? They're real good at coming in here. We have some big mama ones. So this is the old garden from the prior resident here, and you can still see the hummocks where they had beds. And even in here, there is still earth exposed. So we've had a hard time getting some things that we want to grow in here. The leek has taken about 50%, but we can't get some of these other harder ones like golden seal or ginseng. So far, not yet. We haven't hit the sweet spot on them. That's the darling calico aster. See how there's more trees over here? So our property line is just in front of me, and so the rest of the woods is on our neighbor's land, and it's a pretty young woods, but once you start paying attention to how long it takes some trees to grow, a pretty young woods becomes a pretty significant woods. This oak, this swamp white's taken a lot longer than the other because it's a lot more shade, but they are holding on, and a lot of the trees in here are ash, so they are dying or have died, and these guys will take over eventually. There's a tulip poplar. That one is getting up to the sun, so is now growing a lot faster. This year, we've not found Prometheas or tiger swallowtail cats, none of them on these trees. I'm not actually even seen a tiger swallowtail butterfly here this year. It's super odd, but maybe it's due to the spring. That was pretty hard on everybody, I think. No, maybe I saw one tiger. Let's not make it more drama than it is. There's the Vernal Pool. Still got some water and a lot of duckweed. We have baby wood frogs all over the place now. Everywhere we step, and when we look out the kitchen window, we'll see tree frogs cleaning into the trees, and it's so encouraging to see what can happen on a little piece of land if we let it. If we just decide to share space. Because really, this just is not our space. Steve and I were talking about that. Like, why are humans citizens? Why are we the ones that get to decide everything? This planet isn't ours. It's every living being. So we need to behave that way. And it's changing. It is changing. There are different plants and animals that are given citizenship status in different countries, and I think we're going to move forward in some really interesting and needed ways. And here is the ragweed that's already all been eaten, and then these really tall ones that look kind of just real dried and dead, because they are lactuca. They're one of the blue lettuces. I'm not positive which one. I looked at the achenes and the seeds, and I'm still not quite positive. So we had a friend tell us it's tall blue lettuce, which seems like it makes sense because it's real tall, and the goldfinches love those seeds. The wing stem on this end is so much happier than a lot of the other places because it's moister. And so we have white snake root. I love this plant. So pretty. Flowering raspberry, Rubus odorata. And in this zone, we definitely see a fair number of migratory birds. They like this area. Neat seeds, huh? Those aren't being picked at yet, probably just because they're not quite dried yet, but they will be. And we're almost done with this little loop. So we planted a lot of river birch here, and almost all of them have done fabulous. This one only has one little part that's alive, and that's one thing that we've learned over time, is to just plant a lot, and some will not make it, many will, but some won't. And so no harm done to plant a lot, because then you can let some just die, because when they die, they're also still providing food with different insects, and spiders build their webs in there, and then you see the birds come in there and eat them. So it's still all part of the big picture of life. That snag that's back there is an old ash, and that thing is used all the time by woodpeckers. We've been passing a ton of redbuds. Steve one year just did a bed of redbud seeds, and they grew like crazy. He ran them through the food processor just to nick the seed coat and soaked them, and talk about incredible germination. And so we have 1,000,000 redbuds planted here, and you can see there some remnant sign from the leaf cutter bees. Our favorite goldenrods always. Another Gleditsia honey locust, and a sycamore we planted. We grew that from seed. Lobelia. That's that whip Steve did a long time ago. I've showed him videos of a cottonwood. Just stuck that cutting into the earth and took hold. Here's Mama Walnut from the other side, and there's redbuds and oaks and walnuts and native raspberry over here, and redbuds. Who ultimately lives will be their decision. They may all coexist. Let's see, green-headed coneflower. Yep. And that's about it. We've got some grape growing on here. The grape in the old field right now, I'll do a video in the future on that, is fabulous. They're putting on so much food for the catbirds. And cedar waxwings, it's really neat to see. And then here we are, we're to our backyard. These chairs Steve pulled out of the trash, and that's where we sit and watch migration happening. But you can see now our west line right there, the farm field. And that's where we stop. And then there's our house. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed the tour of the south end of the property. Our advice, as always, is plant lots, control the problematic invasives, and then don't control anything else. Just observe and be inspired.